Good morning. This is Grandpa Tommy Halstead, thanking you for visiting the Baha'i channel. Thanks to our 3 loyal subscribers here. This video is a recap of the final Wilmette Institute Theology thesis for Baha'i Theology, which we did on Baha'i Computational Theology. The whole thesis paper is in the description here on YouTube, so check it out. It includes a bibliography, notes, references, so please augment this video by reading it, because this video is just an abstract of that thesis to keep it brief. Please also subscribe and discuss your thoughts in the comments, and create problems and challenges in the comments also, as that's the essence of scholarship, as much as finding solutions, according to our fellow Michigander, the late Dr. Dan Wagner. Creating problems is a good thing. I have some interesting Dr. Dan stories for those who are interested. Check it out in the comments, or text me, or check it out in the comments, or email me. The thesis paper in the description covers many of the important issues for computational theology, and in our sense that we're using here, artificial intelligence, especially machine ethics and causality. But right here in the video, we'll focus more on a new model and AI systems about, by, and for the Baha'i scriptures and the Baha'i framework. We call this model the Mihdi project, and this is its basic outline. We've written a lot of articles and are finishing a book right now on point bias in artificial intelligence, but it basically gets back to causality. And Baha'u'llah has revolutionized our ideas about causality in all 3, epistemology, ontology, and taxonomy, which has many wonderful implications for transhumanism and machine ethics. A couple examples are that Baha'u'llah says that the revelation is the cause of all science, and we see all these leaps today going on because Baha'u'llah has revealed all that we've seen since the 1840s in the Industrial Revolution and Revelation, basically. And everything going on in AI and all that is a direct impact from Baha'u'llah's revelation is in this incredible new age, including Abdu'l-Baha said all the sciences are augmented, including weapons design. So it comes, and it's up to humans with our degree of autonomy that we have. God also is the cause of all in each moment, not just the first cause. And Baha'u'llah talks about the detached souls being the leaven of all of the planets. All the wonders of arts and sciences come from those souls and through them as the leaven of science. So those are all amazing new causality issues, and that's very important to this model and the Mihdi project, as we'll discuss it soon. But to briefly summarize machine causality, then we'll jump into the more parts of the paper and the model, the Mihdi project model itself. But David Hume changed Aristotle's linear view of human causality to a new view of automatic, though still linear, association in the brain. Dr. Dan Wagner, we mentioned, took that a step further and added systems thinking. In the process, he removed free will from the equation, but elevating association to systems rather than just social or religious programming. And then Alexander Moloch, in the bibliography you'll see in his book, Program Causal Inference in Machine Learning, connected the dots of that motivation, as well as authors like Lambert Deckards in his book, Motivation, and equated conditioning, psychological conditioning, with programming. So when we talk about conditioning, and then in machine learning and AI, we're talking about programming, but we can also turn it around and say we're also programmed through conditioning and many other things. The last video had a reductionist sort of math formula on how many of our things really are not according to free will. And our highest science that we have makes association kind of the golden fleece of science, because causality is seen in randomized trials in experimenting with our environment, not just David Hume's idea that we must follow from A to B to C, but we can actually interact with the environment by creating experiments. And that was augmented in science, of course, from observation to the empirical parts of science, which is with randomized trials. The last final step, or the big leap in machine learning and artificial intelligence, was taken by people like Judea Pearl. It's called Pearlian causality, and inventing what I'd call computational causality. There's more on this in the technical appendix, which we'll post on social media and then in the comments to this video. But the appendix wasn't included in the description of the paper because it's long and has a lot of notes, and those we'll save for the comments. Moving to the model itself, you see this the Mihdi project, and in the Mihdi project there are 9 modules. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. They're not in they're order of discussion, not order of clockwise or counterclockwise. But we're proposing these as the implementation of what we're calling Baha'i Computational Theology from the Baha'i Theology course. We won't get into the theory behind this, as that's covered in the paper in the description. The model here, the Mihdi project, is a real beta program to demonstrate the costs and benefits of new AI tools and soon our silicon organisms. There are issues like trying to get to this model so I can point to it. There are issues like transhumanism out of the scope of this video that raise questions like, will enforced theology or machine ethics, making machines not capable of destroying our planet, for instance, suggest the same thing in humans, like enforced ethics with chips in our brains that will not permit us to commit murder, for example. We can't really design systems that attempt to keep AI from exterminating us without some bright problem creator coming up with a way to use the technology in humans, and pretty soon vice versa. So let's be careful in what we design for the 3 rules, the 4 rules, the 5 rules, the machine ethics, the theology for machines, which is legitimate, but also considering that transhumanism would argue, hey, are you going to do the same thing in humans so that we can, stop destroying ourselves or the planet and ending up with what we call enforced theology, which is not something, obviously, that is the Baha'i faith agrees with. Questions of autonomy then also surround any discussion that we'll have of will, choice, and the most important thing for machines and machine learning, of course, is self-awareness. Self-awareness in both machines and humans could give birth to something that we call self-preservation, or, in some of the views of philosophy, the will to survive, the will to live. Certainly Schopenhauer considered will really based on the will to live. But once you have self-awareness and self-preservation, then you can get into self-love, self-promotion, self-aggrandizement, self-focus, or switching to the spiritual side, which we're suggesting here, in Buddhism, Islam, and the Baha'i faith, self-illusion, self-surrender, self-effacement, and self-abnegation. These are all paradoxical artifacts of balances and trade-offs between programmed behavioral control and autonomy in the design of both humans by God and AI by us and by God. But just think about it. You have to balance programmed behavior control, which social behavior conditioning does, and autonomy. And those are all in the middle of sequences that we call associations, which is how the brain works and how AI works in machine learning. We're going backwards in neural nodes with back propagation and feedback, and that's the same thing as doing weights and biases in our own brain, as we do weights and biases in ChatGPT, in which we'll suggest we're going to do in the Mihdi project here. Now, the same holds true on the spiritual side as a balance between being selfless and self-subsisting. Both are attributes of God. God is completely selfless in giving us a creation which he had no need for creatures, and yet he's also self-subsisting. Do we ourselves also want to give autonomy to our androids and our spiritual children? Yes, it's considered the highest art and science to be able to create an autonomous being, and we're trying like crazy to do it. Is it a good idea? I won't opine on that. A lot of people are thinking and saying, wait a minute, put on the brakes. That's not a good idea. we hit the singularity, and if we don't have the ethics, machine ethics, it's going to exterminate the planet. On one hand, religion itself celebrates autonomy and being self-sustaining, and on the other, it decries self as hell and ego. So what's the balance? Well, the balance there might be just common sense, the necessity to dress ourselves and to make breakfast each morning while we still can, or our androids plugging themselves in when they feel weak. So let's briefly summarize the models here as we look at them. The two main parts of the model are these two satellites, which are what theology brings to AI and machine ethics. This is part of computational theology, and what AI then brings to theology. And we call that machine ethics as a summary, but here we call the other Mihdi AI scholars, but you'll see it's much more than that. AI can bring a huge amount to theology in terms of all of the aspects of both making machines accountable ethically and through moral choices with theology, and also augmenting our theological inquiries and systems and scriptures with the assistance of AI. I hate to use the word interpretation, but we'll get to that. So let's just look at those two. How does, oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. Here's how does Baha'i theology enhance AI? Under machine ethics, we've got apologetics, which is, looking at pro, cons, both sides, and that helps with the critical thinking. We're doing this right now with deep reinforcement learning and all of the different lexical and large language models you're seeing within conversational AI like ChatGPT and those others. The critical thinking, pro-con thinking, you see through all of the responses come from a type of apologetics. Hermeneutic models, which are really the addition of religion to science by preventing the amoral nature of AI from destroying our planet. And text adherence as scriptural reverence, or programmed as respect versus contempt in text processing, which helps us limit and create ethics for our AI and machine learning and our machines. It also helps create trust in a higher source than competing programmers, because we may end up not having one giant AI program, but many different nations who all have different objectives, some which may be to destroy the other nations. So we have to agree on a common framework, and that's one thing Baha'i theology brings to the whole world, is a world standard for ethics both in humans and in machines. We'll get further into that. But the idea of hermeneutics, of course, is adding, both sides of the issue from religion to science. And even and AI right now is not immoral or moral, it's amoral, which means it's just like science, which means it has no morality. And it'll have to either be taught that, program that, or discover that itself. Weighting virtues like truthfulness and obedience higher than expedience. All these things can happen with weighting, biasing. And bias is a different thing in machine learning. It's not a bad thing. Biasing and weighting are how we do backpropagation, how we create nodes that talk to each other and create associations when we teach it language, for instance. And those are standards with which we can all agree. Guidance comes both from the House of Justice and to the House of Justice, because the House has many things to give to AI, and AI has a huge amount, as we'll see in the next module, to give to the House of Justice and all the other Baha'is and houses in the second corollary, in the second module. Humility is an extension of overestimation weight adjustments. We're already programming as we did with AlphaGo, adding a little humility to the program when it starts to overestimate its predictions. And it's the same as, we call it immorality, but it's really separating false negatives from false positives in dependent variables, and also in parameters. Now, we have to define the parameters for Baha'i scripture. That's in the next one. That's not it's easier said than done, because defining parameters when there's 137 billion in ChatGPT. So we're talking about billions and billions of parameters. Now, if you're not into the science side, all a parameter is if you say, you tell your local Echo device, wake me up, it'll say, what time? That's a parameter. So you're telling it, giving it an instance or instantiation, you're giving it a basically a command, and then you're giving the parameters that you want it to follow. So anyway, these are just a few of the things that the Baha'i faith and Baha'i theology can bring to artificial intelligence. Now, on the other hand, there's a huge amount that AI can bring to Baha'i theology, just a huge amount. Imagine having what we have in the Baha'i faith, the actual writings of the central figures, the five figures. We have the Bab and Baha'u'llah, we have Abdu'l-Baha, we have Shoghi Effendi, and we have the House of Justice. And taking all those writings, that incredible corpus of training material, and giving it to AI and saying, go for it. Within months, with the current degree of parameter adjustment, we can get AI to have the voice of Shoghi Effendi. In our translations, we can go back to that. Well, I'm not saying a prophet in a box here, as I said in the paper, but we can definitely get to Shoghi Effendi's tone, intonations, translations now with AI. That's coming. It's almost here. So we do need to look at this. This is a private project right now, but from the standpoint of the research department of the House of Justice, it's amazing what AI can bring to Baha'i theology. And there's many more modules we'll see in the main modules and in the next satellite here. But AI-assisted questions and answers go far beyond the simple concordances or compilations. And back when I was with Baha'i Publishing Trust, everything for a while was compilations. And then we moved to concordances. Then AI and normal search engines caught up to searches, and we got into concordances. Okay, what did Baha'u'llah say about that? How does it relate to A, B, and C? AI has taken absolute quantum leap over that in computational theology. We can now take AI, and I hate to use the word interpretation, but I'm using it technically. It's a compiler and an interpreter. It's not saying, I'm going to interpret the writings for you. It's going to say, I'm going to make these connections and associations that you've never made between hundreds and thousands and millions of words. We have the direct writings of a manifestation for the first time in planetary history. Muhammad was illiterate. He couldn't read or write, but he had 45 scribes following around when he dictated. Today we have the manifestation. We have Abdu'l-Baha, our beloved master and exemplar, Shoghi Effendi, and we have our house, our beloved house, giving us a huge amount of guidance. Take that all, put it all into AI, and it can help translate from Persian and Arabic into English and French and Spanish and German and everything else, as well as doing translations that are very close to the voice, the syntax, the choice of words, the epidemiology. I mean, not epidemiology. I'm sorry, I'm from medicine, but the you know what I'm talking about. The whole Shoghi Effendi's the whole choice of words. So I'm kind of spacing out, but anyway, instead of interpreting, it's saying, I'm going to tell you what these writings mean, even though we can get to meaning with AI now, and it will grow faster and faster in that. Just imagine taking that capability and putting all the Baha'i writings there, and then lining it up with questions and answers, and using the writings. That's how the current books do now, including the Ruhi. And you'll see there's a module here that we have that's called a Ruhi generator, or an AI teacher. Instead of painstakingly waiting for 15.2 to come out in 6 months, this can take Ruhi's 80 through 900 and create them all in a day. Of course, humans have to look at this and go back and forth currently, but even today's AI can generate amazing content for education. So a Ruhi generator can happen right now with the current Mihdi project, and we will be doing that and demonstrating and trying it as part of what the AI can and will in the future do. Finally, when we have weighting of all those virtues, as we said, whoops, I'm sorry, we got to get back into our lower part of the extensions coming to our current modules, which include detailed logic based on far more and faster Baha'i scripture analysis in a few seconds than any human team could do in years. Because we have causal and textual inference that can suggest extensions of hundreds of house opinions in just an instant. So those weights and biases can really include a major amount of new logic, not only helping with education, the writers are saying, but opinions on issues, consultation, and even proof casing the Baha'i revelation. Just as we've done in the past in Islam and other places where we say, oh my gosh, how internally consistent this is, AI can now say, this revelation is astonishingly at 99% accuracy internally consistent just from the lexicon and from the context. And those are just scratching the surface of what AI can bring to theology. We don't have time to go into it. Please check this description, read the article, and then look more on the sources because it's incredible. These are more, there's other, to wrap this up, there are many other Mihdi modules that go along with theology adding to AI and AI adding to theology and the Baha'i faith. But one of my favorites is the world building model sim, which is something that's happening a lot in the Mihdi project and with AI. And in the context of the Wilmette Baha'i Theology course and other courses, the whole idea of simulating societies can now be done with AI, where we can take the Baha'i framework and the model and plug it in. Oxford University is doing a great job on this, but there are many other references in the text in the description that will show you where we can take our Mihdi project and literally model the Baha'i framework and say, here's what it does in the future compared to other frameworks. You can see also that we're generating teaching assistants and teachers with AI that could teach Ruhi classes. I see it now astonishingly. I'm not happy about it. I'm a chess teacher, but I'm seeing AI programs that can teach chess a lot better than I can because it sees things I can't see and brings in many more aspects. Same thing with the Mihdi AI, where you can talk to it like you talk to your Echo or your Google or your Siri, and it comes back with not just answers that it makes up, but the writings. It'll search all the writings in a nanosecond that it would take the research department 6 months to search. So this is an augmentation that we really need and that's here that we can use right now. Create test prep with it, composition, and many others. Now, we mentioned voice answers, but if we go back to all the modules here, the world building sim that we mentioned, and actually society building, which is in our framework right now, we're claiming we build society. AI can say, look, compared to all these other social systems, here's 50 of them, here's the Baha'i model, and here's how it flakes out, and here's how it ranks. AI can do that now. Consultation technology tools. I'll give you a fake one that I made up from some actual ones. A husband and wife come into the assembly and they say, dear friends, we're disagreeing on whether how much we should give for hukukillah. The husband wants to give $3,000. The wife wants to give $4,500. And we've done the math. Here's what we've done. The 9 members of the assemblies can go through it, collect data. Maybe there's an accountant on board. Kind of help, talk a little, see what their thoughts are, look at their assets, then see the emotional side. It is the decision of the couple, of course. We don't have enforced taxation in Baha'i faith. But what if you had a 10th member of the assembly, AI? What if Mihdi were there, the Mihdi project, and said, hey, Mihdi, here's the situation. This couple's trying to agree on what to give to hukukillah. Mihdi can have all the writings on it, all the scriptures on it. Mihdi can calculate it instantly in a second what it would be in their case with their assets and their income. It can also give all the case precedents of the other 1,000 couples that have ever come to assemblies in history, what we call case precedent in law, and say, here's the decisions of these 800 other assemblies. Now, I'm not so sure the House is going to want to use case precedent. That's a question. They are sort of the central authority with the NSAs that do this now in consultation. But you can see what a tool it is, what a potential incredible tool it is. I've got an awesome book here. You probably can't see it, but it's Collaboration Through Consultation by Sarah D. Hoff. Now, it's all the different religions, but she also quotes Abdu'l-Baha in there, so I'm assuming she's a familiar friend of the faith, or Baha'i, she's familiar, but it gives how important consultation can be in all types of human activities, saving the planet. Add AI to that. Can you imagine what kind of consultation we can have if AI gives you both guidance on what's going on in the consultation, but also is able to do case precedent and technical additions to the discussion by bringing the infinite combinations of the hundreds of thousands of words in our writings that are related to that. Simply, we know what we know, and we can look on a few books. Can you imagine if we had our AI assistant here to bring any writing we want instantaneously? This is coming. We mentioned the public voice aspect, the RUI teachers. Now, these three are more technical, which you'll handle in the appendix. How are we doing this? How are we creating this AI? We're basically using conversational AI like ChatGPT, but augmenting with statistical machine learning. And our scriptures are the training sets. We worked on this a little many years ago at the Baha'i Publishing Trust by translating into many languages, but look at the 840 languages at the time we were programming into that non-AI computer and trying to get it to generate type and text, not necessarily translations. But just think about the different languages that can be now done in seconds with Google Translate or with any of the other platforms, including Amazon and AWS, or the one that ChatGPT is using, Microsoft, with their different platforms, or probably the most popular one for research, which is IBM Watson, if you have a lot of money. But we are now doing this and putting it together privately as a private project, just as a demonstration beta project. The coding frame also obviously includes causal inference, and that's something that we'll have to get into in more detail on the technical side of this. But again, to wrap up, thanks for patiently checking out some of the interesting contents from the Wilmette Institute Baha'i Theology course. This is a course that's well worth taking, so I hope I can see you there if these topics interest you. As always, any of the opinions, this is our disclaimer, that go beyond the direct scriptures are human opinions, and they have zero validity to any other human, except to suggest areas for us to investigate individually. As Baha'is, we have no interest in promoting our own interpretations or opinions. Anything that seems too far out there is, as the authors say, probably our fault. It's probably a tangent or a rabbit hole. It could be fun, but it's not authoritative in any sense of that word, including authorship. If you buy Wegner's or Baha'u'llah's models of authorship, Baha'u'llah says we don't have any authorship, all is from God. Wegner says authorship is a feeling, that it's not based on fact at all. All is from God. Finally, the next set of videos are coming from our next class, which is on the writings of Baha'u'llah, which will be wonderful. Look forward to getting into that. So again, thank you so much for visiting. Thanks for your patience, and thanks for taking the time to watch the video. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.